So as you can see, I've gotten over my red lighter superstition. I usually don't get red, orange, yellow lighters. Well, yellow I do. Trying to look around for a green one, mostly green. You know what, I always have a tendency to light a cigarette and then start making a video, which is a waste of cigarette, waste of time in video too. Well, the main thing, I'm always asking people what canon would they use, what canon. The New Testament is the canon of the church. In the East, minus, I mean, it's more or less the canon of the church. It's not really. Constantine, when he issued the 50 books, he made 50 books and then asked people to put their writing in them. And people theorize what's in there. A lot of times the Gnostics and the New Agers will say, no, the New Testament, that was all of the New Testament. Well, probably had the Shepherd of Hermes and it probably had First Clement. I actually, 10 years ago now. 10, yeah, wow, no, 12 years ago now. I actually made my own, my own New Testament. Well, my own canon. I put together some books that I thought, well, this is what I'm going to read. One of them was this, the Sophia of Jesus, and it was actually printed off of the same one I did this time too, the Gnostic Society Library. I had the Sophia of Jesus. Didn't really understand it back then. That's before I read Irenaeus and stuff like that. 2 years later, I read Irenaeus. Started clicking. Oh, that's right. With the Church Fathers, I really am foggy on the Church Fathers. It's been 10, 8, maybe 7 at the earliest that I've, well, going back to that I've read them. Actually sat down and read them, and it is kind of tedious. You just like sitting down and reading the Bible, especially it's kind of tedious. And when reading Church Fathers, a lot of people, I mean, when I read them, I didn't read them with devotion. It was reading them, trying to comprehend them. It wasn't going through, let's say, how an evangelical would with the Bible, trying to. Well, I'm actually, you know what? That's too much of a judgment. I don't know if that's what they do, but that's how I would do it with the Bible. I'd have a bunch of different translations. Any words, it'd have one or a next would go, and you see the alternate word, try to read it with the alternate word in there. For the most part, translations are pretty good. I think maybe the New Testament might be the best translated work since it's done over and over and over. And it has some there's a flaw with this though, is that the English translations keep trying to base things off of the King James or of how people remember them. Like again, I said the NASB is probably my favorite. And this book, reading along with this book, is pretty good. Which I still haven't gotten to the issue of canon. Got all my books here, and none of them seem to be in order. Okay. I was going to show you the copy of the book, the Bible that I actually went through and marked between P and E and J and D. But of the New Testament, I would have to say this work right here, the Didache, of people to read. I think the canon for the church, that's fine, what they have now. But of what Christians should read, more than the Bible, I would say the Didache. It's very short, even printed out like this, it's only 5 pages. Let's see if there's even a 5th page. Yep, this is the 5th page, so 4 pages. I should make a video where I read through it, but the chapters aren't in order of, well, not, I don't want to say in order, they're not of equal length. You know what, I've been doing those things every once in a while, reading a verse of the Quran, or a surah of the Quran, sorry. I should actually go through and do this, because I think the only people who I would really help with reading that would either be people seeking to become Muslims or newly Muslim converts, or reverts as they would say. But I would definitely have the Didache in there. I think that's important. The Shepherd of Hermes, I think, is way too weird for most people to read it. They'd be like, "What is going on with this?" Um, the for the purposes of the church, First John, definitely, I'd say all of the works, all of Paul, whether it's pseudo Paul, whether people call it pseudo Paul or not, but all the Pauline letters would have to be in there. The four Gospels, even though I don't like Matthew that much, but it's got the Sermon on the Mount in it, so you can't really mess with that one. Uh, Sermon on the Mount would be top. First John, the works of Peter don't need to be in there, but I don't think they do anything bad. So okay, why not? But I'd label them pseudo Peter because I don't know. I just always had the intuition they were never from Peter. The more I look into it, I find it hard to believe that that's Peter. James, I think, is written by Paul, as strangely as that may sound. I don't think Hebrews belongs. Surprisingly enough, even though the Book of Revelations is banned from being read in the Orthodox Church, I would have it in there. I love the book. I think it's from a very early date. This is where Pandora's Box is going to disagree with me. But even the canons of the churches, the Armenian Church has 13th letter to the Corinthians, and I always ask people, why not? Why not? Why not? Why not? And they don't know what it is. Well, somebody who knows what it is knows it comes from the book that's usually called the Acts of Paul. It's the Acts of Paul and Thecla. A lot of people say that the Catholics and the Orthodox have the the infancy gospel of James with Protevangelium. The Protevangelium is basically it's after somebody basically read Matthew and said, "Oh, hey, what about this? This is a cooler beginning than the other one, or kind of could fit right in there." Although it's not of the same style, I don't think it was ever a piece of Matthew. Uh, the Orthodox Church does not accept the Protevangelium of James. What it is there's a lot of beliefs that were ancient beliefs that got put into there, and that the church still holds oral traditions, and they wound up basically putting them into this Protevangelium of James of Mary being raised in the temple. The names Anna and Joachim, the church had always known, or at least that's what they had called the parents of Mary. But the book itself is not. It's not considered inspired text, even though they're all inspired texts. Everybody was, unless they were basically a heretic or somebody trying to refute a heretic. I mean, these are books people remembering their Lord and writing about it. I think Protevangelium is too late, although I would put it very early. I would put it mid-second century. I don't think it's as late as the third. Some people put it at the fourth, fifth, which I totally understand why, and I wouldn't argue the point with them. Even though I hate this term, but I tend to use it a lot, I have to agree to disagree with people on that. I think it's a fruitless argument. The Sophia of Jesus would not be in there, even though it was. Um, and this is the copy of. I got it from Early Christian Writings, which is actually a pretty decent website. Uh, the Acts of Paul, which Paul and Thecla is a huge person in the Eastern Church. The Acts of Peter, I'm inclined to believe, are earlier than we think. I think there are some stuff. There's a lot of stuff that is probably a lot earlier than we think it is. Mark, I don't think is past 60. I don't think it's past 60. And I think there's a piece of it, which I think it's called the Passion Narrative, is probably somebody. I think maybe even. See, this is really. I got a couple theories on this one. but that may have been written down 34, 37 AD, or a not written as an oral tradition, something told and retold, not oral tradition like we would know of today, almost like the Quran, where you memorize what they say, you know. So it could have been a document. It could have been somebody just scrawling it, and then it getting memorized, and then turning into Mark. Uh, there's very little parables in Mark, and a lot of it is immediately. Use that term a lot, and it's again another term I don't like. People use a blow-by-blow account. It looks like uh, somebody who was there, who collected stories, wrote it. John, again, a lot of theology in John, a lot of very opinionated person, someone who, I mean, this was not. I think the reason for the late dating is this is when a community came to a consensus of who Jesus was. It was already thought out. It was already they already knew what they were writing, and it was highly stylized. Q source, and I know people overuse Q, quell source, whatever they want to call it, but that's just the material that appears common to Luke and Matthew, but is not in Mark. Uh, there may have been a gospel out there, something like that, or it could have just been oral tradition from different churches, different bishops, or whoever. But I think the one thing that the people should read is the Didache, and it has things in it like whatever you would not want done to you, don't do to other people, as well as the Golden Rule. It's got both of them, and it goes into early Christian worship of praying 3 times a day, the Lord's Prayer. Because again, this was remembering it. This was carrying it on. This was trying to remember what Christ did, what the apostles did, trying to repeat it. And we see the Eucharist, which is very funny about modern American churches. Eucharist was always the center of Christian worship. I mean, throughout the whole church. I mean, that's why people came to what church was, and we use the word church in such a strange way. There's only one church. Like this morning, I'm going to be going to the temple. I'm not going to be going to the church, and I'm part of the church. Discussing the early church, I think, is very important. Not only, especially for spiritual matters, people are very afraid of. I think they're going to lose their faith. Well, your faith may change a little, maybe even strengthened a lot, but history and even the mindset of mankind springs from this point. Western mindset, not even Western, but I mean, this is a primitive time where what these texts are talking about is going to affect the rest of the world. And we get so much insight because there's a lot of different documents. Think of any other religion in the world. It doesn't have this many documents. And the church didn't say, okay, these ones are fine. We're going to burn the rest of the copies. That didn't happen. I mean, where do they find the Gospel of Philip? In a Greek monastery in Menethos. People were writing and debating, and you could see the different opinions and views of the communities from where these works are coming from. And it's good. It should be sought out where these came from and who wrote them. Even if we can't get so close to the answer, it's still a good question. This video is running a bit long. Peace to you. You guys have a good Sunday. So as you can see, I've gotten over my red lighter superstition. I usually don't get red, orange, yellow lighters. Well, yellow I do. I'm trying to look around for a green one, mostly green. You know what, I always have a tendency to light a cigarette and then start making a video, which is a waste of cigarette, waste of time in video too. book, and people theorize what's in there. A lot of times the Gnostics and the New Agers will say, no, the New Test that was all of the New Testament. Well, probably had the Shepherd of Hermes and it probably had First Clement. I actually, 10 years ago now. 10, yeah, wow, no, 12 years ago now. I actually made my own, my own New Testament. Well, the main thing, I'm always asking people what canon would they use? What canon? What canon? The New Testament is the canon of the church. Uh, in the East, minus, I mean, it's more or less the canon of the church. It's not really. Constantine, when he issued the 50 books, he made 50 books and then asked people to put their writing in them. On the church fathers, it's been 10, 8, maybe 7 at the earliest that I've, well, going back to that I've read them. Actually sat down and read them, and it is kind of tedious. You just like sitting down and reading the Bible, especially it's kind of tedious. And when reading church fathers, a lot of people. I mean, when I read them, I didn't read them with devotion. I was just all my own canon. I put together some books that I thought, well, this is what I'm going to read. One of them was this, the Sophia of Jesus, and it was actually printed off of the same one I did this time too, the Gnostic Society Library. I had the Sophia of Jesus. Didn't really understand it back then. That's before I read Irenaeus and stuff like that. 2 years later, I read Irenaeus. Started clicking. Oh, that's right. With the Church Fathers, I really am foggy